Good afternoon, everyone. It is 1 o'clock on January 22nd. It's a Saturday, and that means it is time for another Western Liberty Network Saturday training session. Today, we're going to be talking about the care and feeding of good volunteers, how to retain volunteers, or how not to drive them away once you've got them enlisted in your project or campaign. Before we begin, we've got a few things to cover. First thing I will do is share our screen with you. And what you see on the screen right here is the home page for Western Liberty Network on the website. And Western Liberty Network is a 501c3 organization. We do not endorse or oppose any candidate, ballot measure, a political party, or legislation. What we do is we train grassroots limited government activists how to do politics, and then they can take the training and use it for any campaign or project that they like. So the statements that are made today by participants in the training may or may not, they do not necessarily reflect the views of Western Liberty Network. So a couple of things to cover right now. If you go to the westernlibertynetwork.org website, the first thing you will see is this. And this is our announcement for our 12th annual conference. We've got a fantastic lineup. It's going to be on February 5th at 9 a.m. We're going to have a free reception the night before at 7 p.m. It's going to be at the Vancouver, Washington downtown Hilton Hotel. And it's $89. And for that, you get to see all these great speakers. We've got Joe Mackey, who is with Fox News. He's a comedian, a Fox News contributor. He's on the Gutfeld Show. John Tamny, economist and vice president of FreedomWorks from Washington, D.C. He's flying in. Dennis Linthicum, state senator. Christina Soltis, who is a member of Slavic Vote and a recently elected city councilor in Covington, Washington. Former state representatives Jeff Krupp, Patty Milne, Mike Neerman. They're going to be doing breakout sessions, training sessions, Kim Thatcher. Go through the whole line. We've just got a fantastic lineup of speakers, and you can find out more about the conference by clicking here. You can download a conference promotional flyer if you want to, and you can distribute this and spread the word. And you can also download this. This is a copy of the full agenda that's going to be used during the conference. If you need rooms, click here. We have sold out our block at the Hilton, but there are other hotels. If you click here, you get a whole list of available hotels. Sponsorships are available, and exposition tables are still available. So we hope we'll see you at this conference on February 5th. Our training is always available free of charge online. If you go to the training tab and scroll down, you'll see a lot of our training documents. These are meant to be provided with a live training like the one I'm providing today, but they stand on their own as well. And they provide a lot of good information. It's not copyrighted, so you can share it, you can print it, you can do whatever you want to do if you think something is useful for your group or a campaign that you're working on. And then, of course, we've got our recorded Saturday sessions. This is one of them today, but every Saturday we record these on different topics. And if you want, you can go down and find a topic that interests you. We've got a whole year's worth of these now, and you can just click on it and view the video of your choice. And if you see things that are of value, if you find Western Liberty Network to be of value, you can always support Western Liberty Network with your fully tax-deductible contribution by clicking on one of these buttons. On this side are monthly automatic contributions, and there are one-time contributions over on the left side. And so with that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and I'm going to, through the chat, provide a copy of the training document we're going to be using today. And so desktop, let's see, 2.6, and here it comes. So it's now available in your chat window. You should be able to download it and view it, or you can do it later, however you like best. Janaea, thank you for coming. Welcome. So what we're going to be talking about here today is the care and feeding of good volunteers. If you are running a campaign or you're running a project and you need volunteers, Lord knows that there are, well, it's difficult to find good volunteers. But if you find good volunteers, you'd be surprised at how hard it is to retain them and keep them motivated. So what this training consists of today are a series of reasons why volunteers quit, and advice to do the opposite. And so we'll be going through a number of those. This should be a pretty short training today. But if you have questions, go ahead and unmute your microphone and ask a question. Or if you prefer, you can use your chat screen and send me a question over the chat window. But we want this to be interactive, so feel free to chime in however you like. So one thing that you'll find every once in a while when you are looking for volunteers, you'll find a really eager beaver. They are just excited as can be. They want to volunteer for everything. They may be capable of doing a lot of different things. They may even be capable of doing a lot of things well. But what we don't want them to do is to burn out. This happens a lot. A lot of times people in their enthusiasm with the best of intentions will overcommit themselves. They'll overcommit their time, and then they just can't anymore. They've got to rebalance their lives. Maybe they spent too much time away from their family because they were volunteering so much. Maybe they're in school and they've been neglecting their studies, so they've got to pivot, and they disappear. That's burnout. So what I advise people to do is, if you get volunteers that are very, very eager, very ready to say yes to everything, don't let them say yes to everything. Just pace them. Keep them busy, give them enough to keep them busy, but don't let them say yes to everything, even if you need everything. Because if you do, 9 times out of 10, they will burn out, and then you won't see them again. They'll just disappear. A lot of times they'll volunteer for everything, and then because they overcommit, they can't follow through. Or if they do follow through, then they disappear because they have to rebalance their lives, and then they're embarrassed about it, so they don't come back and they disappear. So burnout is a real problem with eager beaver volunteers. Pace them, give them enough to keep them busy, but do not let them overload themselves. So that is one thing to avoid. Another one is what we call cool out, and that is if you don't give them anything to do. A lot of times I see campaigns that have a little button that says volunteer, click here, and you click there and you put in your information, what you're interested in doing, and so on. Then you never hear from them. If you have a campaign or a project, make sure, and you want volunteers, make sure you have ready tasks for volunteers to do. Meaningful tasks that are helpful to your campaign or project, that are ready to do. And if you get a volunteer, give them something to do. Typically, if you don't know the volunteer, or you don't know very much about the volunteer, give them something small, significant, something that you need, but something small that you can live without if the volunteer decides to totally flake out or doesn't follow through properly. But you've got to give them something to do. The opposite of burnout is cool out, and cool out is when you don't give them enough to do. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry about the 1980s style light slats across my face. I can't close my blinds any more than that. And we've got sun, but I promise not to step into a 1980s video or anything like that. Okay, another one is keep out. There are organizations, and political parties are famous for this. I've seen this in the Libertarian Party, I've seen it in the Constitution Party, I've seen it in the Republican Party. And that is, people who have been in an organization for a long time, they make friends, cliques start to form. And when someone new comes in, it's clear that they're new. It's clear that they're not part of the clique. And, folks will not do anything bad, but they'll behave the way they always do, staying close to each other, and make the new volunteer feel isolated, like they're not really a part of the group, like they're not really welcome. That's very important to avoid that. It's important, if you have an organization that relies on volunteers, that when you expect volunteers to show up for a meeting, that you have some people designated to be sort of a welcoming committee, somebody that takes them around, introduces them to people, make sure that they don't end up standing alone with a cup of coffee and a donut or something, and that they're just standing there socially isolated. Make sure you've got a couple of good people that are nice and congenial, ready to introduce them and help them get started with whatever you're working on, and just make them feel welcome, like you're glad they came. That's a big one. Another thing too is don't pressure volunteers too much. That I just described, keep out, keep them out. They're outsiders. There's actually that mentality in some organizations, but you don't want them to feel obligated to do too much either. Sometimes when a new volunteer comes in, they can feel pressure to commit to something that they may not feel that they're ready for yet. And so if you ask them to do too much, things that they're not ready to do, if they start to get pressure, they will stop coming because they feel that pressure and they don't like it. Sometimes there are volunteers that are eager beavers, and you've actually got to slow them down, like we described in the earlier part of the session. But sometimes people just want to stick their toe in the water. Sometimes they just want to, get to know people, listen, watch, before they decide they want to do something. So it's important that if you're dealing with volunteers, that you do not pressure them to do too much before they're too ready to do it. If you ask them to do things and their eyes start darting in another direction and they hem and haw, you might be asking them to do too much. So those are the 4 things so far. Make sure that you don't let somebody take on so much that they burn out. Pace them. Also, make sure that you have something for them to do. So if you have people that are volunteering to participate in your project or campaign, that you're ready to put them to work doing something. Also, when you're having your meetings, make sure that it's socially, that when new volunteers come and they don't know people, make sure that you have a couple of members of your organization designated to new volunteers to make them feel welcome, get them cookies or punch or whatever, and introduce them to people, and help them from being socially isolated until they feel more comfortable with the group. And also, do not pressure them to do too much too fast. A couple of people have come in. I'm going to resend the document that goes with this training, so that you can either follow along or look at it later. It's in the chat file now if you want to download it. Another thing too is, if you are in a campaign that has an uphill battle, if you're a long shot campaign, or if you have a very tough fight to win, volunteers can disappear for that reason, because they're thinking, there's no way this can win. If there's no chance to win, or if there's not very much chance to win, why should I bust my butt for this thing? It's the can't win problem. I see that a lot in third-party campaigns. You're going to run like heck, we're going to work real hard, and you're going to get 2% of the vote. Why should I bother? That's a good question. And if you find yourself in a position like this, there are a couple of things you can do. The first thing you can do is have a set of secondary goals. Okay, maybe your initiative has long shot odds and you might not win this time. You can tell your volunteers, well, we're going to fight to win this, and maybe we will win it. But even if we don't win it, we're going to position ourselves for the future, because we're going to build volunteer networks, donor networks, we're going to build media contact lists, we're going to build email lists, volunteer networks, all of these different kinds of things. And even if we lose this time, this is going to help us build the infrastructure to do it next time. That is a great way to go. If you are running in a district where you have very long shot odds, you're outspent 10-1 and registration's not on your side, you can say, well, what we're doing is this campaign is designed to build the foundation for future success. Not everyone will be sold on that, but a lot of people will. The point is, if they're volunteering, they need to feel like they are making a contribution, not a futile gesture. And so make sure that they see that their volunteerism has value. And you can do that with secondary objectives. That's very important. Another way that you can lose volunteers is if you really have, if you're on the other side of that campaign. Maybe you're on a ballot measure campaign where your side, has a commanding lead, or maybe you're in a district where one party has a big registration advantage. It's considered a safe district, and you're on the safe candidate's side. Volunteers sometimes disappear because they're thinking, they don't really need me. They're going to win anyway. They're going to win with or without me. So, they need me anyway. They don't need me, so I'm not going to volunteer. I'll do something else. And you can also, you can overcome this by pointing out the value of not being complacent. You can say to these people, we're in pretty good shape. We don't want to ever take anything for granted, but I know that we're in pretty good shape in this campaign, but we still need you because there are other fights coming that are going to be harder to win. And we need to have pools of talent who have experience and training that are ready. Consider this campaign, if you think it's one, consider it a free play, a chance for you to try things, to learn things, to experiment, and to build experience and help others get experience, so that when we have a harder campaign to fight next year or on some other sort of campaign, make sure that you have something, some experience to build on. So that is one way to fight that. Another thing you need to see is no growth. If your organization is stagnant, if it's not building membership, if it's not taking on new projects, those kind of organizations will sometimes lose members because there's no growth and they don't see a future. They don't see progress. So it's important that you always have something going on. People join organizations that do things. And so always have some kind of productive project online. Always do what you can to keep your members mobilized. Always have a plan to have new members come in. Have something for volunteers to do. If you do these things, there will be growth, a path to the future, because people generally quit volunteering for organizations which they perceive are not growing. So make sure you always have something in your organization that shows a path to growth. Someone's coming back. Aaron's coming back. So Aaron's coming back. Another way that volunteers disappear is if they're not appreciated. A lot of volunteers work really hard, and they're probably not doing it to get prizes or awards or appreciation. They're probably doing it because they believe in the cause or the person that they're helping, but it doesn't mean they don't want to be appreciated. And a lot of times there will be organizations where volunteers work hard, and the leaders of the organization are so concerned with the campaign and the outcomes that they forget to take a moment and appreciate what their volunteers do. It's really important that if you are leading an organization or a project, that you contact your volunteers or go up to your volunteers once in a while and say, look, I know you really worked hard last Tuesday night. You stayed late. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. That goes so far with volunteers if they just get some recognition and some appreciation. Once in a while, it's not a bad idea to give a little certificate, some kind of an award to volunteers who have gone above and beyond the call of duty. Occasionally, if you're running an organization, it's good to have a night where you have an activity where there's no work, but just fun, maybe a bowling night. Say, okay, we want to say thanks to our volunteers. Let's get together for a bowling night next week, or something like that, or go out for pizza. It's important to have appreciation. There was a story once, I don't know the details, but back in antiquity, the great conqueror of what was his name? Alexander. They were in the desert, and they were running out of water, and so some of his men collected what little water there was and gave it to Alexander the Great. And Alexander looked at it and said, you know what? I'm not going to drink this, and poured it into the sand. He says, I'm not going to have water until, my people get water. And it just threw a whole bunch of life into his army, and they went on and they found water and they conquered. It's important that leaders really show that there is appreciation for what they do. And just as the water gesture motivated the army to continue on, showing a little bit of appreciation, an award, have a bowling night, pizza night, can have the same effect on volunteers and can actually double their motivation and their commitment to your cause or whatever you're trying to do. So make sure that you always show appreciation. One thing too that drives volunteers out is if there is external opposition. By external opposition, I mean opposition to a person volunteering that is outside of the organization. One good example of that is if someone is really dedicated to a campaign, but isn't spending enough time at home, and so their spouse might be getting upset with them, or things might be going wrong, with their job. They're taking too much time off to work on your campaign. Whatever it is, that kind of external opposition will eventually catch up to the volunteer, and they will be compelled to either seriously undermine their life outside of your cause, or they might have to break it off and not volunteer at all. If you find that you have volunteers that are throwing their lives out of balance, you really need to sit down with them and say, look, I really appreciate your commitment. You've done wonderful work for the organization, but I know you're having some trouble, with some other issues, and I need you to back off just a little bit. They might not like it in the beginning, but they will respect it. And over time, not only that person that you're speaking with, but other volunteers will see that you're not just view them as meat for the grinder, that you really care about them. And that kind of care can inspire people to even, double their commitment, but make sure that whatever their level of commitment is, that they don't lose balance. And I call that external opposition. Another one is external conflict. This one can be difficult as well. I should say internal conflict. Within a group, cliques often form. Personality conflicts arise. People take one side, people take another side. Petty rivalries take place, and it can be just cancer to an organization if you start to get a toxic environment because of personality conflicts. Then what you're going to have is people not coming back. They're going to decide, well, I signed up to do something good for my community. I didn't sign up to be in this toxic environment. Faction, personality clashes, these kind of things are just awful. And there are a couple of things you can do to prevent that. One thing you can do is to make sure that your leadership understands what the divisions are. If someone is being narcissistic, if someone is being, territorial, you need to confront them about it and tell them to knock it off. Sometimes what you can do is you can take two groups of people and give them completely separate jobs where they don't have a lot of interaction with each other, and they're just good at what they do. That is one thing you can do. Another thing too is if you have an organization, it can be very helpful to have a set of bylaws, some structure in your organization that everybody agrees to. You might vote to adopt a set of bylaws, and these bylaws can have specific officers, and they have specific responsibilities, and there are clear lines of authority as to who's in charge of what and who reports to who. Campaigns need this, and this isn't always going to solve everything, because even with organizations that have good sets of bylaws and good leaders, there will always, in a large group, an active group, there will always be personality conflicts. But a good set of bylaws, organizational structure can do a lot to channel that energy in a productive way. You don't have somebody saying, well, why did you have the authority to do this? Well, I've always done that. Well, it doesn't mean you should do it now. Well, you think it's your job? Why do you think it's your job? Well, because I'm better at it. I know what I'm doing. I work, without a set of bylaws, these are the kind of discussions you get into. And with a set of bylaws, you have somebody who has a job title, a job description, and who they report to. And it is a lot easier to say, nope, that's my job. It says right here in Article 4, Paragraph 5, or whatever it is. It really is a good way to avoid, or at least minimize, the kind of conflicts you have internal to an organization. Policy disagreements, this is another one too. Sometimes people disagree with a policy or a decision that an organization has taken, or that a position on an issue that a candidate has made. And I think that you really got to be diplomatic here. You have to allow that even in a campaign with an incredibly inspiring candidate, not everyone is going to agree with 100% of everything that a candidate says. If you're in a political party, you probably don't agree with 100% of your political party's platform. What are you willing to live with, and what are you not willing to live with? And it is fair to go to a volunteer and say, look, I know you have this difference with our candidate. You're with our candidate on 90% of all the things that he or she stands for. I know you disagree with this item. You have to decide, is this something that is going to make you want to walk away from the candidate, or is this something you can swallow and stick with our candidate through the rest of the campaign? Be frank, be honest, not judgmental, but maybe it's best if a particular volunteer walks away because of a policy disagreement, or maybe if the volunteer thinks about it, the greater good is solved by sticking with someone who they might not agree with on this issue, but they agree with on 100 other issues. To what extent are you going to allow the perfect to become the enemy of the good? A lot of times just having frank conversations about this, not gossiping behind people's back, which people sometimes do, and ascribing motivations to people, which may or may not be true. It's important to have clear communication about these kinds of things. And finally, what can drive volunteers out is if there's no fun. A lot of volunteers, they want to help a cause, but they also typically want a social experience, and they typically want it to be fun. So it's important, if you're running an organization and you're leading a campaign, that you try to find ways to make volunteering fun. Have little contests where the winner wins a $10 Starbucks card or something like that, or have the bowling night I talked about earlier. If it's someone's birthday, bring them donuts or a birthday cake. Have a little party at your volunteer thing. Make sure that you show appreciation to your volunteers. You keep them busy. Don't let them do too much. Help them keep their life in balance if they're really committed. Make them feel welcome in your organization. Find ways to have fun, and avenues to channel internal conflict if there are clashes, those kinds of things. If you follow the advice in this document that I've sent through here, it's not going to guarantee that you will not have problems or challenges in retaining volunteers once you get them. But if you follow the guidance in this sheet, you will do much better than if you did not follow the guidance in this sheet. And it's important to build cadres of volunteers and to keep them motivated. So anyway, that is the training that I have. Does anyone have any comments or questions today regarding this document or this training? I see Donna's microphone is open. Janae's microphone is muted. Aaron's microphone is muted. Feel free to unmute and chime in, or send a message on the text if you want to. Okay, if not, we're going to call it a day. I hope you enjoy this training session. Oh, Aaron, did you just turn off your microphone?
I did. I just wanted to say, Richard, this was a really helpful training for me. Great information, really, really great guidance. And so I just wanted to say thank you so much. I appreciate you doing these sessions for us.
Well, thank you very much, Aaron. It's a lot of fun. I love doing them, and I'm glad you got some value out of it. Anybody else have a comment today? Okay, with that, we will call it a close. Next week, we're going to do a preview of the upcoming conference. That should be interesting, and I hope you'll be back to join us. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful week. Go to westernlibertynetwork.org and get your conference ticket if you haven't already, and God bless. Take care.